Haha, boy oh boy, now that I bought a PlayStation 4, I can't wait to play Persona 5. Partially because it's a good game, but mainly so I could rub it in the faces of every last dingus Xbox owner. Haha, boy oh boy, I can't wait to play Persona 5 Royal so I can play the true finished version of the game, although I kinda wish I didn't have to buy it all over again. But I mean, it's not like I'm being punished for buying a PlayStation just to play this game, seeing as there's no chance this Sony exclusive is gonna be put out on every other console in the near future with all the DLC included or anything like that.
Keep your eyes peeled for more Persona!
On Nintendo Switch!
Dang it.
Cameron, all the Cameron, danger. Oh no, it never fails. He'll take the cruise and find the where's and why's and who's. Cameron, all the Cameron, danger. Cameron.
Okay, so maybe saying that PlayStation 5 owners were punished for buying Persona 5 Royal is a bit of a stretch, but still though, the game going multiplat with all the DLCs, yet another example of why it's just plain friggin' dumb for any platform to have timed exclusives. Don't get me wrong, this isn't gonna be a hit piece on Sony or anything like that either, because the exact same thing happens for all kinds of games jumping ship to different platforms, and you know what? I always think it's a bad idea for everybody involved. Like, I get that the idea is that if you have games in your console that you can't get anywhere else, and people who want to play those games will either feel rewarded for already owning your console, or have an incentive to go out and buy one. Exclusives are a big part of what sells consoles, so it's not stupid for console makers to lock games down whenever they can. Hell, I don't even think it's scummy or anything like that either. But like, if you're gonna lock an exclusive down to your console, then you gotta at least keep it on there for longer than like 2 or 3 years, man, come on. I mean, seriously, what good does a timed exclusive do for anybody? If it's a game that's really popular, then you're gonna have to pay the developers way more money than they would have made by selling it on a rival console, which would lead to selling more of your own console, but probably not enough to justify the money spent on locking it down. On the flip side, if the game's only moderately popular, then it may be cheaper to secure, sure, but if it's not selling any consoles, then the slightly extra sales can't possibly be worth it, right? I mean, I'm just some schmuck with a YouTube channel and a tiny crumb, so if they keep doing timed exclusives then, I guess they're believed to be profitable, but I don't know, let's just say I'm a little more than an ass or skeptical on that one. Even if some money is being made though, I still don't think it's worth it to screw the consumer over, whether they already own your console or not. Like I said, I don't consider a permanent exclusive as something that's screwing anybody over, otherwise we're gonna have to call Nintendo evil for not letting anybody play Mario games on Xbox. Well, legally anyway. But if you're only gonna have it exclusive for a little while, then you're basically gonna be forcing your audience to be the only ones actually paying for the DLC, and possibly dealing with a bunch of early glitches and day one patches, since most gamers seem to accept incomplete games being released for some reason, sometimes even onto physical media for that matter. And if you don't happen to own the console with the temporary exclusives that you want to play though, then you're basically just gonna have to wait till the game's old and used to get your greasy little paws on it. Or, you know, you could spend a few hundred extra bucks on a new console, and possibly even more for DLC, only for the definitive version of the game to come to the console that you already had in the first place. But I mean, you got to play the game a little earlier, I guess, so that's kind of cool, except not really at all. You could argue that I'm only focusing on the negatives, and I should also talk about how you could either have first dibs on a game while it's hot, or get the definitive edition later on, but the reason why everyone loses is because everybody's gotta be forced to deal with one con, and I just prefer everybody to be winning is all. Sure, permanent exclusives mean that people who don't own the console just lose all around, but at least people who own the console win all around, and the people who buy the console just to play the game don't feel like chumps when the game just goes multiplat anyway, which I'm sure happened with people who bought a GameCube just to play Resident Evil 4. But Cameron, aren't you that bloke who's been advocating Persona 5 going multiplat for years? Well, yeah, because I don't think third-party exclusives make sense at all anymore, seeing as how they're all just temporary anyway, so it's not necessarily that I wanted Persona to be a timed exclusive, I just think that it always should have been multiplat to begin with, and for the record, not just Persona. I think any third-party game should just be on everything that can support it. Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft want exclusives, and they should just make some themselves rather than paying somebody else to, because the reality is, if it's a game like Grand Theft Auto, then nobody can afford to tame it as an exclusive in the first place, and if it's just an average game, then why bother at all? Then there's the issue on whether or not you should announce up front whether or not a game's gonna be a timed exclusive or not. I mean, obviously it's good to be up front, and to be fair, most publishers are, but like, if I know I only gotta wait a little bit to get a better version of the game on the console I already own, then of course I'm not gonna buy a brand new console, and I have no idea why anybody would unless it's like their favorite game series of all time or something like that. I thought the Tomb Raider reboot was a really good game, so I was pretty excited for the sequel, but then Microsoft apparently paid $100 million just to have it all to themselves for 1 year. I, being a PS4 owner, said frig that and just kind of played other stuff for like a year, because if the game wasn't coming to the PlayStation, then why even bother announcing it as a temporary exclusive in the first place? Not only that, but if the game had DLC, then why would it not be included in the PlayStation release on day one? After all, if you're gonna put an old game out on a new console, then you gotta sweeten the pot as much as possible, so since this wasn't a game I was dying to play, why would I have even considered the possibility of maybe getting a brand new console just to play an inferior version of it a little bit sooner? I know I can't be the only one who thought this exact same thing, so I'd be shocked if Rise of the Tomb Raider sold more than like 10,000 Xbox Ones at most, and I think I'm being really generous here. At best, maybe there were a few people who already owned both consoles and didn't feel like waiting for the PlayStation version and just bought the game on an Xbox, but I really doubt there were enough of those people out there who would have otherwise chosen the PS4 version to make it worth spending $100 million friggin' dollars. I know Capcom actually did make it clear that Resident Evil 4 would go multiplat after the GameCube got first dibs, and boy did that game ever go multiplat, but even though Capcom gave people a heads up, most gamers had no idea unless they had subscriptions to gaming magazines and actively kept up with the news. Maybe you weren't around for that back then, but I was, and I can tell you that there really weren't that many people who knew about stuff like this. Hell, I didn't even have any idea, and I played games all the time. When I saw that Only 4 logo on the Resident Evil 4 cover, I thought it was just gonna be on the GameCube forever. So, you know, I'm sure it did suck for a lot of people who bought a GameCube just to play Resident Evil 4, but at least back then it probably did something for the GameCube just to have the game to itself for a little while. However, these days, pretty much everybody knows when third-party exclusives are only going to be temporary, and even if they don't, Carl at Circuit City is probably going to tell them before they buy a brand new console just to play one game. As far as Persona 5 Royal goes, though, I might be giving Atlus and or Sony a little too much credit, but when they originally started this game, I really don't think they expected it would make much sense for the game to go multiplat in the near future. I mean, the first 4 Persona games were on the PS1 and 2, which is pretty much where every notable RPG ended up back then. Not to mention the fact that both of those consoles outsold the 64, GameCube, and Xbox like 10-1, so of course Persona was going to be exclusive to Sony back then. That's a pretty sweet deal for Atlus. Even when they started making Persona 5, it was originally supposed to be for the PS3, so I tend to believe that Atlus didn't really consider the casual-friendly Wii, the nobody-friendly Wii U, or the Xbox 360 that only sold like 14 units in Japan. Now that the sales have slowed down, though, it just makes sense to bring Persona 5 along with the rest of the series to other consoles for the people who've never had a chance to play them before, especially after Persona 4 Golden blew their expectations away on Steam. So, yeah, I don't really blame anybody for not making it clear that Persona 5 wasn't technically locked down as a permanent Sony exclusive, because I really don't think that anybody involved predicted that it would have made sense for the series to go multiplat a few years later. I just hope now that with Persona being one of the last exclusive third-party franchises to go multiplat, people will finally realize that everybody just gets a little screwed over by timed exclusives. Either lock that shit down, or just let everybody play the damn game. Anyway, that's all for today, but if you got a kick out of my incoherent rambling and disturbing imagery though, then you should check out this video I made ranking all the Persona 5 Royal characters from good to evil, but if you'll excuse me though, I gotta go bail my dad out of the slammer. Later!